Hi, and welcome back to this AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals training. In the previous lessons, you learned what cloud computing is, its main benefits, and the different cloud deployment models, public, private, and hybrid. In this lesson, we will focus on another key topic for the AZ-900 exam: cloud service models. By the end of this video, you will be able to explain the difference between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, or IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, and recognize each of them in exam-style scenarios. Here is what we will cover in this lesson. First, we will define what a cloud service model is and how it relates to the shared responsibility between the customer and the cloud provider. Second, we will look at IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS one by one, focusing on what you manage and what the provider manages. Third, we will compare these models side by side and practice mapping real-world scenarios to the correct model. Let's start with the basic idea of cloud service models. A cloud service model describes the level of control and responsibility that you have over the IT resources you use in the cloud. In the previous lesson, deployment models answered the question, where is the cloud infrastructure located and who owns it? Public, private, or hybrid cloud. Service models answer a different question: how much of the stack do I manage, and how much does the provider manage for me? To understand this, we need to talk about the shared responsibility model. In any cloud environment, responsibilities are shared between the customer and the provider. There are always things that the provider is responsible for, such as the physical data centers, networking, and hardware. And there are things that the customer is responsible for, such as data, access, and how applications are used. What changes between IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS is where the line is drawn. The more you move from IaaS to PaaS to SaaS, the less you have to manage, and the more the provider manages on your behalf. Let's start with infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, is the most basic cloud service model. With IaaS, the cloud provider gives you virtualized infrastructure components such as virtual machines, storage, and networks. You gain a lot of flexibility and control, but you also have more management responsibilities. In an IaaS model, the provider manages physical data centers, power, cooling, and networking, physical servers and virtualization layer. You, as the customer, are responsible for installing and configuring the operating system, applying patches and security updates to the OS, installing and maintaining applications and middleware, managing data, access, and configuration. In simple terms, with IaaS, you are renting virtual infrastructure, but you still behave a bit like a traditional system administrator. Let's look at some common examples of IaaS in Azure. Typical IaaS services include Azure Virtual Machines, Virtual Machine Scale Sets, Azure Disk Storage, Virtual Networks and Network Security Groups in Azure. Use cases for IaaS include migrating existing on-premises applications to the cloud with minimal changes, running applications that require full control over the operating system, hosting custom line-of-business applications that do not fit well into a PaaS or SaaS model. In AZ-900 questions, if you see a scenario where a company wants to move its servers to the cloud, but still wants to manage the operating systems and applications, the correct answer is often infrastructure as a service. Now let's move one level up, to platform as a service. Platform as a service, or PaaS, provides a managed platform where you can deploy your applications without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. In a PaaS model, the provider manages physical infrastructure and virtualization, operating systems and runtime. Many platform services such as scaling, high availability, and security patches. You, as the customer, are responsible for your application code and configuration, your data and how it is structured, application-level settings and access. With PaaS, you focus on building and running applications, not on managing servers. Examples of PaaS services in Azure include Azure App Service, for hosting web apps and APIs, Azure Functions, for serverless compute, Azure SQL Database, a managed relational database service, Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, which provides a managed Kubernetes cluster. Typical use cases for PaaS are web applications and APIs that need easy deployment and automatic scaling. Serverless workloads that respond to events without dedicated servers. Databases where you do not want to manage the underlying database engine or operating system. In AZ-900 questions, if you see a scenario where developers want to upload code and let Azure handle the rest, or where the team wants to focus on application development instead of managing servers, the correct answer is often platform as a service. Now let's go to the highest level of abstraction, software as a service. Software as a service, or SaaS, delivers complete applications over the internet. Users simply connect to the application through a browser or client, and the provider manages almost everything behind the scenes. In a SaaS model, the provider manages infrastructure, operating systems, and runtime, application updates, patches, and new features. Most security controls at the application and platform level. You, as the customer or user, are mainly responsible for how you use the application, your data, configuration, and access within that application. You are not deploying code or managing servers. You are just using the software. Common examples of SaaS include Microsoft 365, formerly Office 365, Dynamics 365. Many other subscription-based business applications delivered over the internet. Use cases for SaaS are email, collaboration, and productivity tools, customer relationship management, CRM, and enterprise resource planning, ERP. Any scenario where an organization prefers to consume a ready-to-use application instead of building or hosting its own. In AZ-900 questions, if the scenario describes users accessing a complete application in the browser, paying a subscription, and not worrying about servers or application updates, the correct answer is usually software as a service. Now, let's compare these three models side by side, focusing on the level of control and responsibility. With IaaS, you have the most control. You manage operating systems, middleware, and applications. The provider manages only the infrastructure and virtualization. With PaaS, you manage only your applications and data. The provider manages the infrastructure, operating systems, and platform services. With SaaS, you have the least management responsibility. You simply use the application. The provider manages almost everything else. As you move from IaaS to PaaS to SaaS, you trade control for convenience. This is an important idea for the AZ-900 exam. Let's practice this with a few exam-style scenarios. Scenario 1. A company wants to move an existing application from their on-premises servers to Azure with minimal changes. They still want to control the operating system and install custom software. This scenario describes infrastructure as a service, for example using Azure Virtual Machines. Scenario 2. A development team wants to deploy a web application quickly, without managing virtual machines or worrying about operating system updates. They want Azure to handle scaling automatically. This scenario describes platform as a service, for example using Azure App Service. Scenario 3. A business wants to use an email and collaboration solution by paying a monthly subscription. Users access the tools through a browser, and the provider handles all updates. This scenario describes software as a service, for example Microsoft 365. If you can map scenarios like these to IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, you will be in a strong position to answer many questions in the AZ-900 exam. Let's recap what you learned in this lesson. You learned that cloud service models describe how responsibilities are shared between the customer and the cloud provider. You saw that infrastructure as a service, IaaS, gives you virtualized infrastructure and the most control, but also the most management responsibility. Platform as a service, PaaS, provides a managed platform where you focus on applications and data, and the provider manages infrastructure and runtime. Software as a service, SaaS, delivers complete applications over the internet, where you simply use the software and the provider manages almost everything else. You also practiced identifying these models in real-world and exam-style scenarios. In the next lesson, we will expand on your cloud concepts foundation by looking more deeply at cloud benefits such as high availability, scalability, and reliability, and how they are implemented in Azure. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.